Welcome in the Enterprise Automation with Python course. My name is Tomasz Lelek and I am a software engineer programming mostly in Java and Scala. I am a fan of microservices architecture and functional programming. In my day-to-day job, I am creating microservices for which deployment is automated using enterprise automation tools. So let's see what we will learn throughout this course. Firstly, we will be doing an introduction to the tools used for enterprise automation. We will install Python that will be used for automating every task throughout this course. Next, we will see how to automate network processes using Python and one of the Python libraries that allow us to achieve that. In the third section, we'll see how to do an administration tasks with Python Fabric. Fabric is a tool written entirely in Python and we will be interacting with that tool using its Python API. Next, we'll see how to perform automation of database management. We'll be using MySQL as an example and we'll be doing database management using Python. Next, we'll see how to manage users. Often, when we have a lot of microservices, we also have a lot of users and we need to manage them somehow. In the sixth section, we'll be looking at the process management and how to monitor infrastructure using Python and its tools. In the last section, we'll see how to automate cloud infrastructure. We'll be automating AWS cloud using Python. There are a couple of prerequisites to this course. First one is understanding of Python language. Also, we will need to have Python 3 installed and PyCharm IDE that will be used for editing Python programs. Also, you need to have some kind of modern laptop or desktop to run your programs on it. And target audience of this course, that is if you are a system administrator or DevOps engineer at the enterprise who wants to facilitate the work through Python and are looking for an alternative from major automation frameworks like Puppet and Chef, then this course is for you. Some basic programming knowledge with Python scripting would be necessary. This course will help you to think and make your daily work easy with the use cases on multiple areas like network, database and cloud. Welcome in the first section of our course. In this section, we'll be looking at the introduction to the tools used for enterprise automation. So we will see why we even need the automation in the enterprise. There will be a quick view about the topology and prerequisites in this course. Also, we'll be installing Python 3 that will help us with automating everything in the actual Python code. At the end of this section, we'll be configuring virtual environments and virtual environment wrapper. And this is a third section in which we'll be looking at the need for the automation in the enterprise. So we'll answer a question why we even need automation and how to automate deployment of our services. We will see how automation in the era of microservices does look like and why it is so important when you are building architectures that are loosely coupled and that have a lot of services running simultaneously. So let's see a main benefits of deployment automation. First benefit is repeatability. So every deployment deploys the same version, the same artifact and the same application. So we can repeat the process all over again. The second benefit is that we have a fewer errors because we are removing manual steps, reducing human error. Always in software applications and software, human factor is the most critical one and error prone. So we need to automate everything throughout deployment process. Anyone can deploy also, so we are eliminating bottlenecks by removing the need for experts to do the work. So we only have one button that is called deploy and everything happens underneath. Everything is automated. We don't need expert that he only knows how to deploy. we can deploy it ourselves. We can work on what matters, so developers can spend time working on new features, not on fixes for manual deployments. Everything is automated, so we can shift developers' time towards creating valuable features, valuable software. Also, when we have an automation in enterprise, we have higher customer satisfaction, because frequent updates with new features addresses customer needs sooner and keeps organization competitive. So it connects with work on what matters. So developers ship something that is used by customers and customers are satisfied and happy. Also, automation of deployment means lower costs because we have fewer errors. Fewer human hours needed for deployment means lower costs. So we don't need to have whole teams responsible for the deployment. Everything is automated. We don't need to hire new people that will do a tedious task that is manual and error prone. Everything is in our code. So I think you see why we need automation, and we will be diving into those aspects throughout this course. Recently there is a trend of microservices. So we have an architecture that is loosely coupled. So let's imagine that we have a system when we have multiple services and each service is responsible for something else. So we have a movie service that speaks with MySQL and Couch database. Then we have user service that also has own MySQL instance. Also we have recommendation service that serves some kind of recommendation from MongoDB, and rating service that is connected with Neo4j, some Hadoop and analytics service. So we can see that we have a lot of dependencies. And in such ecosystem, deploying everything manually will be almost impossible because we need to coordinate a lot of tasks. We need to start MySQL, user service, movie service, rating service, and so on and so on. Also, we have a lot of dependencies between microservices. So the ordering of deployment could matter. And this knowledge should be embedded in actual code. It should not be in the brain of some kind of expert, but it should be automated all over the place. So we should be able to take some kind of recipe and deploy that ecosystem on an infrastructure, on AWS, on Heroku, or some other provider like Google. And we'll be diving into how to achieve that in this course. And in the next video there will be a quick view about the topology and prerequisites when building automation pipelines. In this video will be a quick overview about the topology and prerequisites of the automation and continuous deployment. So we'll see what a continuous integration is, topology of automation process. We'll see automation approaches that are in enterprise architectures, and we'll see how to achieve automation in the enterprise environment. So we will be looking at the couple of automation approaches, and first one is scripting. So in scripting, deployments can be automated by writing scripts which perform actions automatically on specific environments in a specific context. The scripting approach is simple but limited, because as soon as environment change, without careful ongoing maintenance, scripts will break and deployments can fail. Second approach is deployment with continuous integration systems. Continuous integration servers like Jenkins or Bamboo make it possible to deploy application automatically as a part of the build process. This is an extension of the scripting approach because the CI system usually is not aware of the details of the application and the underlying environment. Rather, the CI system automatically triggers scripts which can be deployed the application. Third approach to automation of deployment task and continuous integration is basic deployment tools. There are numerous tools that can deploy application automatically without requiring organization to write and maintain scripts. However, these tasks are typically suitable only for simple applications that do not have multi-step or multi-component installation, because they do not have orchestration capabilities. In the context of microservice architecture that we speak about in the previous video, this is not an ideal situation. So they cannot support deployments that have a sequence of steps occurring in a certain order, with dependency between different components. Also, the basic tools typically cannot fully model the underlying environment on which the application is installed. So this approach will be not good for microservices architecture. Fourth approach is a model-driven deployment. The most advanced tools are able to package even the most complex software systems, model the environments on which these systems run, and orchestrate the deployment process across numerous software components, servers, and installation steps. They also provide visibility, tracking, and auditing into what happened in deployment across the organization. So if we have big enterprise, then we can deploy something like this, and we have auditing into everything what happened, who clicks deploy, who redeploy version to the new one, and so on and so on. And last thing that we can consider when performing continuous integration is a continuous deployment process. This is an extension of continuous integration. This is an extreme form of deployment automation where numerous or all changes made in development undergo automated testing and are immediately deployed to production without any human factor. So if a programmer pushes some changes to some kind of repository, it triggers continuous integration process, it triggers all testing, and if everything is fine, then it is deployed to the production. So this is risky, but we have a very quick feedback loop and very fast iterations. So let's look at the continuous integration process in more details. So firstly, we have code. So software developers are creating some kind of code and they push some code to the repository. That push triggers build process. So it builds the application. Then we have integration of components and testing. So this is happen on the continuous integration server. Then we can create a release that is an immutable thing that is created out of the code that developer pushed. Once we have release ready, we can deploy it to multiple environments. We can deploy to development environment, test environment, pre-prod, and to the production finally when we are ready and sure that everything works as expected. At the end, once everything is deployed, we need to operate it somehow. So for example, if we have a web application, we need to route traffic to that specific node. So we need to configure load balancers, DNS servers, and so on and so on. And this is at the layer of operations. And continuous integration is from the code phase to deploy one. Operate is further, but it also can be automated using slightly different tools, but we will be looking at those tools in this specific course. In the next video, we'll be installing Python 3 that will help us with achieving our automation goals. In this video, we'll be installing Python in version 3. That Python will be used, language Python interpreter, to perform automation tasks in this course. So firstly, we'll see how to install Python, and we'll be experimenting with Python interpreter. So we will try to run some simple program using Python interpreter. So if you are a Linux user or Windows, you can just go to the www.python.org and download the most recent Python version. After you will download it, just unpack it and you will have a Python binary inside of it. If you are on the Mac machine, then you can use Homebrew. So you can type a Homebrew install Python and it will install whole Python environment with P, that is a Python tool for dependency management, and also with virtual env. Virtual env will be used in the next video. So once we have Python installed, we can type Python and it will start a Python interpreter. Python interpreter is just a REPL, so this is a read evaluate print loop, so we can type here everything in a Python language, it will be interpreted and code will be executed against Python environment that is installed on our machine. So let's type a simple print function and let's print hello world. And we can see that it printed hello world. We can add two integers. Also, we can perform some more advanced mathematical expressions. So we can do something like this. And we can see that there is a result ready. So we installed Python and we can do some kind of stuff using Python interpreter. To exit the interpreter, we need to type Ctrl-D and it will exit the Python interpreter. In the next video, we'll be using virtual environment. This is a Python way to manage dependencies inside of a virtual environment that is used for a specific project. So we'll be set upping such virtual environment and creating wrapper with some kind of dependency that will be fetched from external server. In this video, I'll be configuring virtual environments and virtual environment wrapper. So I'll be installing Python virtual env and installing Python plib. Python plib is a tool for dependency management and virtual env help us with keeping dependencies not global but local to the specific project or to the specific virtual environment. We'll be downloading some kind of Python library and using that library from Python interpreter. So to install pip, we can type sudo easy install pip if we are on a Linux machine. If we are on the Mac, we already installed pip in the previous video. So we can pip install virtual env. Virtual env is a just simple Python library and we can install every library using pip install. Next, when we will install virtual env, we can create new virtual env using pyvenv and some kind of name. So we are calling it myenv. Then once we create it, we need to activate it. So we need to switch to that environment. So let's see how does it behave. So let's first create a new virtual env and it will create that environment. Once we create it, we need to activate it. So let's type source myenv bin and activate, and it will activate that specific environment. So once we are activating it, we can see that we are inside of myenv. So this is a name of that specific virtual environment that we are working against right now. So if we will install some kind of Python dependency right now, it will be installed inside of that virtual environment, not in the global scope, but here inside of this virtual one. So let's imagine that you want to write a simple Python program that takes some kind of web page and prints some kind of details of that page. So it prints out where that page is located, when it was created, when it was lastly modified, and so on and so on. So let's say that we want to investigate webpage www.pythonforbeginners.com. We can use a Python Whois library to achieve that. This is a simple library for querying and parsing domain registration information. So we can take information when that specific domain was created and registered. So we want to create such program in Python. You can clone that project, and inside of that project we have all programs that will be used in that course. Next, we need to install Whois library. This is that library that we saw previously, and we will start Whois example Python. But let's start from the beginning. So let's install that library. We need to assert that we are inside of virtual environment here, and then we can install Whois library. If it is already installed, then it's easier. So let's say it is installed. We can see that it's already installed. So let's create a program for querying domain for some specific informations. So firstly, we need to import Whois library because we'll be using something that is shipped with that library. Because we installed that library using pip, we can right now use it. So then we can use a query method on that Whois. Let's see what Whois also has. So that object has method like query, do parse, do query, and some kind of environment variables. But we are querying for that specific domain name, and it returns some kind of object, and we are assigning it to the W variable. And W variable has a last updated, name server's name, creation date, expiration date, and registrar. So firstly we are printing name of that domain, then creation date, we will see when it was created, then name servers when that domain resides, and also when it was last updated. So once we have such program, we can use it and start it using the same Python interpreter, but this time we are passing an argument that is a Python program. So we are passing who is example and typing enter. And we can see that it prints out Python for beginners. Then some kind of date when that domain was registered, so it was in 2012. Then list of servers where that domain resides and when it was last updated. So we can see that we achieved non-trivial task using library. We downloaded it using Python dependency manager. We installed it inside of a my virtual environment and executed program that prints out some kind of information. So there need to be HTTP request to retrieve that details, print out to the console, and so on and so on. So we can see that Python is a very powerful language. We achieved a lot in so small amount of code and so quick time. And we will be leveraging those properties of this language to achieve more advanced and very useful tasks throughout this course. So let's sum up the first section of our course. So we learned why we need enterprise automation. We saw what a continuous integration is, continuous deployment, and how to achieve continuous integration and automation of whole process of deploying code to production. We installed Python that will be leveraged throughout this course. We installed pip and virtual env that will be used to download some kind of external dependency and use them. And we created a simple program that uses external library, and we achieved non-trivial tasks in very fast time. And in the next section we'll be looking at the topic of network automation task. So we will try to automate some kind of network management using Python. Welcome, this is a second section of our Enterprise Automation in Python course. In this second section, we will see how to automate network tasks. So this is a network automation task section 2. We will see how to use NetMaiko to control network devices. We'll be installing that library on our local machine, leveraging pip and Python virtual environment that we created in the previous section. At the end, we will be creating Python code that uses NetMaiko library to gather some information from external network devices. And this is a first video of our second section. In this video, we'll be installing NetMaiko Python module. So firstly, we'll see what a NetMaiko is, and we will see at the documentation of that library, that project. Next, we'll be installing that library on our local Python virtual environment. So let's look at the web page when NetMaiko library is described. So we can see that this is a library for controlling network devices. This is a Python library that simplifies SSH management to network devices. So the interface that library is using is SSH. So it uses SSH to send some kind of commands to external network devices. And we can download that library. We can see that this library has 4 main purposes. So it helps us with establishing an SSH connection to the device. It simplifies the execution of show commands and the retrieval of output data. It also simplifies execution of configuration commands, including possibly commit actions. Because as we can see, configuring network interfaces could be error prone when done in manual way. So we can automate it using Python and that NetMaiko library, and do the above across a broad set of network vendors and platforms. And we can see what kind of devices that library is supporting. So we have a Cisco devices, HP, Juniper, Huawei, and so on and so on. We can use it from Python. And also there's a GitHub project with that library. We can see that Python is used almost all the time in that library, and here we can see some kind of the documentation. So it could be used in Python 2, Python 3, and Python 3.6. And it shows what kind of devices it supports. So let's try to install that library on our virtual environment. So we are inside of our virtual environment directory. We can see that the Python virtual environment is enabled. So we can type a pip install netmiko, and it will fetch that library and install it on our local virtual environment. In the next video, we'll be configuring multiple Cisco devices via netmiko library. We will see some Python code how to achieve a specific task. In this video, we'll be configuring multiple Cisco devices via netmiko library. So we'll be using netmiko from Python, because as we remember in the previous video, we installed that library using Python Dependency Manager and inside of our virtual environment. So right now we are able to create some kind of Python code that will be using that library. We'll be creating it in this video. So let's say that we have a following problem. We want to create a program that connects to some kind of Cisco device and get version of that specific device and print it out at the standard output. So we want to do it automatically, and that show version command will be executed against Cisco device. So let's start from the beginning. We'll be using connect handler from netmiko library. This is an input to the device that will be connected to. So we need to have connect handler object, we need to create it, and we need to pass some kind of configuration that will denote to which device we want to connect. Also, we want to ask a user to get some kind of password, because every router, every network interface device should be protected and secure. So we need to have username, of course, and password. And we are using standard Python library to get password. Also, we want to take some kind of raw input from the input stream of our console. So firstly, user, we need to type an IP address of Cisco device. So let's go through this program. So we are starting from asking end user to type IP address. And this is the raw input method. So this is from Python library, and it will just take whatever user will type and assign it to IP address variable. Next, we need to define a device map. That is the configuration of a specific device. This is a map, and this is a way to construct map in Python. So first we need to specify device type, and this will be a Cisco iOS. If you have some kind of different device, you need to specify here accordingly. Next, we need to type IP, and this is the IP address that we just taken from the end user. Next, we assume that we are logging using admin account, but we need to take the password for that admin, and getPass method will be used for that. We could use a raw input, but then the password will be in plain text and it will be visible to third party and third persons. We don't want to do it in this way, so we are using getPass method that will put stars or hash or something like this instead of the actual letters, so it will be not plain text. At the end, we are specifying on which port we want to connect, and we are specifying that this is a port 22. Up to this point, everything was in pure Python, but we need to use netmiko to make the actual connection request. So we are using a connect handler object, and you are passing device map here. So this is from netmiko, and we can see that it takes a map of arguments. and it will establish the connection to Cisco device that will be on that specific IP address using that specific username and password and of course port. And we can assign it to the NetConnect object. That object could be used to perform some kind of diagnostic or sending some kind of commands to the device. We are using a send command expect, so we can type what kind of command we want to send to this device, and that command will return some kind of output, and that output is assigned to the output variable. So we are assigning that we want to take show version of that specific device. At the end we are printing that output to be visible at the standard output. So let's start this program. So if you will start this program, it will ask you about IP address. So let's type some kind of IP address or localhost, and then password to your IP. And if it will be a Cisco device, it will print the version of your device. In the next video, we'll be gathering some more informations from Cisco devices. In this video, I'll be gathering information from Cisco devices. We'll see some more complex use case example, more complex than in the previous video, because in the previous video we only issue one simple command, show version of the device. In this video, we will be using NetMiko library to configure actual device. So we will try to load configuration from our local file system into network device using automated program written in Python and leveraging NetMiko library. So let's say that we want to create some kind of temporary config and send it to Cisco network device. This program will be very similar to the previous one in the part of authentication and getting to the specific network device, but there will be some additional code responsible for creating config and sending it to the device. So we are getting pass, same thing like in the previous video. We need to get pass for the admin user, also raw input for taking IP of device, connect handler that will be used to perform actual connection to that device. But one thing is new here, it is named temporary file, because we need to create some kind of config, and that config needs to land in temporary file. It will be used to load that file into device, but this should be a physical file actually created on the file system. So the beginning is similar. We are taking IP address, we need to have a device data defined, and then something new. We are creating a new named temporary file. So that file will be created, and we are specifying that it should not be deleted after the program finished. So that temporary file with some random name will be created, and we are assigning it to variable f. Next we are printing the location of the temporary file. So store temporary config at the f.name, and f.name is a handler to that specific file. And this is a very important information because it will be used by NetMiko to configure a network device. Next we can write some kind of configuration. So in this example we are writing some specific config, but it should be anything what we want. But it is important that it should be a byte, because if you are specifying string here, that method will throw exception. It should be a byte array, and to achieve that in Python we just create a prefix b before the actual string, and it will be transformed in the byte array. At the end we are flashing that file because we need to save it to file system, and then we are ready to connect to the actual Cisco device. So we are creating new connection handler that is taking device data, and it returns netconnect, that this is a variable that will be used to send config. And we are using send config from file, and we need to pass an exact location to that file. So we are passing a file.name, and it will take that file, load it from the file system, and send it via network to the device. And it returns some kind of output. We are printing it and saying that config is uploaded. At the end, we are just closing our file. So when we are starting our program, we need to pass an IP address, of course, and some password. Then we have log that stored temporary config at some path. So let's see that config. If we will print that config, we can see that there is some specific config. So that specific config was created and it will be loaded into network Cisco device. So let's sum up this section. So we started from installing NetMaiko and we saw what that library does and when it should be used. We saw how to leverage NetMaiko to get information from a router. We saw how to use NetMaiko to configure network device. And in the next section, we will see how to perform administration tasks with Python Fabric. Welcome in the third section of our Enterprise Automation in Python course. In this section, we will see how to perform administration tasks with Python Fabric tool. We'll start from installing ParaMaiko library, then we'll be performing installation of Fabric module. We'll see some kind of practical examples using Fabric, and we'll see how to configure web server using Fabric. And this is a first video of our third section. So we will start from an installation of ParaMaiko module with initial examples. So we'll install ParaMaiko module and we will see what that library does. We will see use case of ParaMaiko library and we will see how to perform connection via SSH using ParaMaiko library. So let's start from the web page that is introducing that library. So we can see that ParaMaiko is a Python library and this is an implementation of the SSH version 2 protocol, providing both client and server functionality. So we can write some client code, connect to some server, SSH server, and on the other hand, we can write our own SSH server using that library. And it leverages a Python C extension for low-level cryptography, but is a pure Python interface. And ParaMaiko is a very important library in Python ecosystem because, for example, it is used by a Fabric tool that will be used in the rest videos in this section. So this is very important to understand what does it do and how does it work. So of course we need to start from installing ParaMaiko library. So pip install ParaMaiko will install that library in our virtual environment. Once we have our library installed, let's try to write some simple program that just connects to SSH server and that's all. So this will be a very simple one. So first we need to import ParaMaiko and also sys. Sys will give us some kind of system codes that will be used throughout this program. So first we are checking if the length of arguments is less than 4. If it is, then we are printing that arguments are missing and we are exiting our program. Otherwise, we are taking a host name, password and command as a first, second and third arguments. Next, our username will be admin, similar to the previous section, and port 22. We need to perform a SSH connection in the try block because the exception can occur inside of it. So at the end, we always want to close our client, but we will get to it in a moment. So firstly, we are using a ParaMaiko library SSH client and it just creates SSH client and we are assigning it to the client library. We are loading system host keys, so if we have some SSH keys in our local system, it will load them. We are setting missing host key policy to warning policy, so that library will do some warning if the key is not present. And the most important method is connect, so we are passing host name, port, username and password. And if something goes wrong, then exception will be thrown and we will close that client. Next we can execute some command on the external SSH and then read output from SSH. So this is a skeleton of every SSH client used in this course. So when we will be performing some more complex tasks using Fabric, Fabric will be leveraging that ParaMaiko library underneath and some lower level. In the next video, we'll start from installation of Fabric module that will allow us to perform some more advanced tasks via SSH. We'll be installing Fabric module. So we'll see what a Fabric is and when we should use it. We'll be installing Fabric Python library for Python version 3. Also, we will see some simple example of Fabric use case. So Fabric is a Python library and command line tool for streamlining the use of SSH for application deployment or system administration tasks. It provides a basic suite of operation for executing local or remote shell commands, normally or via sudo, and uploading, downloading files, as well as auxiliary functionality such as prompting the running user for input or aborting execution of a specific task. Typical use case involves creating a Python module containing one or more functions, then executing them via a fab command line tool. So to install Fabric for the Python version 3, we need to type pipe install Fabric in version 3. Once we will have that, we can execute some actions using Fabric. So please check out this project, and inside of it we will be experimenting with Fabric. So this is a simple Fabric script. We need to import Fabric API and we are importing run command. First function is simple Python function. We are not using any Fabric specific functions. So this is a function called hello and it just prints hello world, but it will be executed against Fabric command line, so this is a useful exercise. Next command is more complex because we want to take a host type and we are issuing a run method that will run that command on a specific machine, and it can connect via SSH or it can run manually on the local machine. But let's see how does it behave. So let's say that we want to create that Fabric file, but very important thing to note is that this file needs to be called fab file. Because as you can see, this is a fabfile.py file, and that file will be taken automatically by Fabric tool, but it needs to have that specific name. So if you are issuing fab command, it will print out some useful commands, but it doesn't know what to do. But let's print fab hello. And we can see that output is hello world and done. So it took the function hello from that fab file and it executes that function. So let's execute host type. We need to specify a host string for that connection. And we have the SSH server running on our local machine, so we can specify just local host. It will run the username -s command, but we need to type a password because it needs to have a permission to run it. And it runs that, and we can see that it prints out the Darwin. So that is a username of our specific machine. And if we will take that command and execute it just in that command line, it will print out exactly the same string. So this is a Darwin. But here we logged to the SSH machine and it was our machine and executed some kind of remote command. So if we will type here some kind of other IP, it will connect to that IP and execute username -s also on that specific machine. In the next video, we will see some more practical examples using Fabric main functions. And in this video, we'll see some more practical examples using Fabric main functions. So we'll see how to use Fabric module to connect to remote hosts. We will see how to create deployed script in Fabric. We'll be using Git client from Python code, so we'll be leveraging command line client. We will also be handling unexpected errors. So let's say that we want to create a prepare deploy function that will test some kind of Python application, commit changes of that application and push it to the remote host. And we want to automate it in the Fabric API. So first thing is a test. So it just starts a manage to file, it passed test and my app. So this will be some kind of file. It could be empty for our test purpose, but it's just testing that file. Then it commits that specific file if everything is okay. So we are using git add manage to, and we are committing that specific file with automatic commit message. At the end, we want to push it to the remote host. So we are inside of a prepare deploy directory, and we can see that there is a fab file here. So let's execute fab. And it doesn't know what to do, so let's execute a one step from them. So let's execute test command. And it shows that there is no such file or directory. So let's create such file. And for a test purpose, it will be an empty file. We need to give a permission that every user can use that file. Once we created that file, let's test it again. So let's fab and test. And we can see that test is done, so everything was as expected. There was not some errors or something like this. So let's execute whole prepare deploy command. We can see that we do a typo, so we can see what are available commands. So we are preparing deploy, and a lot is going on right now. So firstly, it tests that file, then it commits a manage to file with the automatic commit message. We can see that it was committed because one file changed, we have 0 insertion and 0 deletions, and we are creating a manage to. Next we are issuing a git push on the local host as well. Here we have host against which the command is issued. So we can see that here we are using local, so it will be used of course on the local host. At the end we can see that we pushed that to the some Bitbucket repository. And let's see if that file is actually on that repository. So we go to the bitbucket.tomek.l007 fabric python, and let's see last commit message. We can see that last commit was created just now, because we just now pushed the manage file to. So let's see what is inside of that commit. We can see that we have a manage2.py file, and inside of it is a comment file. So we can see that we pushed a file using automated process. Our prepare deploy function is very simple, but we are not prone to errors, because what will happen if local step will fail? We don't know it yet. So let's create a fab file that is handling that case. So inside of a test method, we are firstly starting that we should execute that log with settings and word only true. Then we are executing local command, and we want to capture eventual failure of that result. We are assigning result of the local call to the result variable, and if result failed, then we are printing test failed, and we are asking user if he want to continue anyway. If not, we are aborting at the user request. If yes, we are going to commit phase, push phase, and we are concluding prepare deploy. We can also create some kind of deploy function when we are creating a code directory. We are creating run, and if everything is good, then we are do nothing, but if failed, then we are cloning the repository and we are starting all over again. And if that directory exists, we are just pulling new changes from external repository. In the next video, we'll be looking at the Jinja template engine. This is a template engine that could be used and leveraged from the Python programming language. In this video, we'll see what is a Jinja template engine. So we'll be using that template engine with Python, we'll be installing that library, and we'll be using template engine that ships with that library. So first we need to install it using pip install Jinja 2, because Jinja first is obsolete and it can be used only from older version of Python language. Once we install Jinja 2 library, we can use its template engine properties. So we need to import a template. This is a specific object that could be used to parameterize that specific template. First example of template is simple hello name. And very important thing is here that this is evaluated lazy. So if it's something inside of a twice curly braces, this is a name, it is not rendered until the template render method is called, and then we need to supply that specific parameter. So if you are supplying a name John Doe, it will be replaced here. So there will be hello John Doe. Jinja template engine has also more advanced capabilities. We can create, for example, some actual for loops inside of template. So let's say that we want to print a my favorite numbers, and we are creating for loop from n to in range from 1 to 10, and we are printing every number. Next we need to call render, but this time we are calling that without any parameter. And calling it in this way will execute that template engine and everything that is inside of a single curly braces. So let's start this program. We can see that it prints out hello John Doe, and also it prints out my favorite numbers from 1 to 9 inclusive. So let's sum up this first section of our enterprise automation with Python. So we learned what a fabric is, and we installed fabric in a specific version that was proper for the Python 3. That was a fabric 3. We automated deploy of simple Python application using fabric. So we created a continuous integration flow, very simple one, but still this is a continuous integration flow that consists of 3 stages. Firstly, we executed the actual Python program to check if everything is working as expected after some changes to that file. Next, we committed that file and added to Git with some simple message, and at the end we pushed that file to the remote server. We saw that change in the Bitbucket remote repository, and we saw that that commit was performing indeed. At the end, we saw a grasp of a Jinja template engine, how to leverage it to create some simple templates using Python language. In the next section, we will see how to perform database management using Python utils and Python ecosystem. So I hope you will enjoy it. In this section, we'll be looking at the topic of database management. We'll see what a PyMySQL is. We'll be creating tables and databases using PyMySQL util. So we'll be leveraging that library to connect to MySQL instance and perform automation of MySQL tasks. We will be looking at the admin utilities, so we'll see what can we achieve using Python programming language and that specific library when connecting to MySQL database. And this is a first video of this fourth section. In this video, we'll be installing PyMySQL Python module. So we'll see what a PyMySQL is, and we'll be installing that module using standard Python dependency manager PIP. So let's see what a PyMySQL is. Here is a documentation of that library. We can see that this package, this Python package, contains a pure Python MySQL client library. It doesn't have so low-level APIs like, for example, DataSeq or something like this, but it gives us higher abstraction that we can leverage to automate database process using MySQL database. To install that util, we need to be in a sudo module. So sudo pip install PyMySQL will install that utility, and then we'll be able to leverage that tool to connect to MySQL instance. We are assuming that you have MySQL instance already started, and let's check if we have also. So the easiest way to check if MySQL database is running is to log in using MySQL command line. And I will be logging using root user. So once I type that command, it connects to MySQL database, and we can, for example, using show databases command. we can see that we have a lot of databases in MySQL instance. This video was an introduction to that library, and in the next one we'll be creating database and tables using PyMySQL. And in this video we'll be enriching top sellers with additional information. So we will go from the point that we stopped in the previous video, and we will be enriching transactions with additional information, adding product info per item ID, and we'll be testing our logic. So that was the place where we left off. So we combined by key and calculated. In this video we will try to insert some data, delete and alter existing table. So we will be inserting data to existing table and deleting data from that specific table. At the end we will try to add new column to the schema of the specific table. So let's start from the insert example. The beginning of that script is the same that for creating table. We are in the context of a specific database name that is a packed database that we created in the previous video. First we are creating a cursor and we are creating SQL create table command. So we are creating table and it will be named super employee. That employee will have an ID field, last name, first name and department code. Next we are executing it, so we will create new table. We are showing all tables inside of the specific database that we are in the context if, and then we are executing that. We are fetching all results, so all tables, and we are printing them. Once we are sure that new table was created, we are able to insert new data to super employee. So here is a statement for inserting super employee. That employee will have a primary key equal to 1, last name will be Albert and first name Einstein, and department code will be 10. We are executing that insert statement, and to assert that everything worked as expected, we are just executing that select from super employee table, and everything is in the context of packed database. Cursor will be populated with new data, so we are able to fetch all data from that cursor once again, reuse that cursor, and print every row in that specific cursor. So let's insert some data into our table. So we can see that we executed our PyMySQL insert script and it returns some employees table, but also super employee table. Then we were querying the all records in that super employee table and it returned our Albert Einstein with ID equal to 1. Let's say that we want to delete that specific row that we just inserted. So let's create a Python script using PyMySQL library that will remove that specific record. So we are specifying database name, same as previously, so we are in the context of packed database, and we are creating new connection. So we have our database connection created. Next we are creating new cursor, and it will be our entry point to MySQL database. We want to delete a specific record. So we are specifying that delete from super employee where ID is equal to 1. And as we remember from the previous script, when we are inserting data, we created a new employee with ID 1, so it should be removed. So we are executing that query and then we are selecting all data from super employee and then we are executing and fetching all results. So let's see the results. So we executed delete rows and we can see that it returns no records because there was only one record previously in that table, and once we removed it, there is no record in that table. So this specific script returned no data at all. Last task that we wanted to perform was to add new column to the existing table. So we want to alter the structure of the table, but we want to keep the backward compatibility. So we want to add new label field. But let's start from the beginning. We are creating new connection using the database that we specified here, and also there is one additional parameter and it's called autocommit, because in database everything is inside of a transaction, and this is a default in PyMySQL, but we are specifying it for the learning purpose. So it means that if everything is okay, that database, the change will be committed. We don't need to do it explicitly. So we are creating new cursor using connection and we are altering table super employee. So we want to add a new field that is called course ID and it will be an integer, and it could be nullable because it doesn't have constraint not nullable. Next we are executing alter statement and we are describing. We want to fetch all data from table super employee, but we are interested in the schema of that table. So describe super employee will do exactly what we want. So it will fetch all columns definitions from super employee. So we're executing that query and cursor will be populated with all columns from super employee table. At the end we are able to iterate over every column and just print every column. So let's see how does it behave. We can see that it returns some data. And we can see that first data means that this is a first field, and this is our ID field that is a type integer 11. Then we have our last name field that is a varchar, first name, department code, and course ID. So we can see that we have new field that is added just in that example. So we altered the existing table and we're able to add a specific column to the schema of our table. In the next video we'll see how to export all data from MySQL instance for the purpose of user management. In this video we will be performing more complex tasks, so we'll try to use admin utilities to export and user management of our MySQL instance. So let's say that we are given a task to export content of all database MySQL local database. So we want to create a Python script and we'll be leveraging PyMySQL util to create that script, and we want to export everything that is inside of our MySQL instance. This is a non-trivial task, but we can achieve it very quickly and very easy using PyMySQL instance. So we are importing MySQL util, and firstly we are defining execute function. Execute function is taking the connection, the cursor, and command that we want to execute. So it executes that command using cursor and return all result. So it fetches all. So this is a useful function that will be used. Next we are connecting to our database localhost. We are specifying port, user and password. And also we want to specify database. So we want to use a MySQL database. And this is a default database that is used in MySQL to perform operation tasks. So let's see what is inside of it. So we are in MySQL shell and let's switch to MySQL database. And we can see that there is a lot of tables here. So we have a database, we have functions, we have, for example, indexes that are defined, statistics about them, we have a slow log, so log of slow queries, servers, and everything related to operation and management of our local or no local MySQL instance. Also, we are created a temp MySQL directory inside of which all data will be stored. Right now it is empty, but we want to fetch all databases from that table using our Python script. So firstly we are executing show tables query, and it will return our data because we are using execute method that fetches all data. So we're iterating over every table, and for every table we'll perform export. So firstly we are taking a table, and this is an array, so this index 0 will be table, and also columns. Next, for every item we are iterating from the execute query. So we are showing all columns from specific table, and we are appending new column to our list. We define that list here. So there will be all columns in our specific table. Next, we are executing the select query. So we are selecting all data from that specific table, and it will return data. Next, we are opening new file handle. So we are using a with open. This is a Python util to create new file on local system, and inside of a temp MySQL table name that is taken from the query, we are creating CSV file and we are opening that file in the write mode. We are returning this as the out variable, so we are calling it out. This is an alias for that specific file. Next, we are writing every column from that specific table to this specific file. Next, we are writing every value. So we have all rows in data because we fetched also data here. First row was columns and then there was data. So we are writing everything using tabulator separator and every element will be printed. At the end we are just printing that this specific table was written. So let's start this program. We can see that there was a lot of databases, so columns brief was written, database, engine cost, event, everything that was inside of the MySQL database. So let's see if those files already exist, if it is true or not. So let's list all files and we can see that there's a lot of files that we just created. So let's see, for example, what is inside of a database file. We can see that we have some kind of columns, so this host, database, user and other things, and also we can see that we have our columns here. Definitions on every row and column. So all database table was saved to our local disk and then we are able to import it to other instance or it can serve as a backup for our MySQL instance. So let's sum up this fourth section. So we learned what a PyMySQL is and we installed that library. We automate creation of database and tables, and also once we have table, we inserted data to it and deleted data in an automatic way. We also used admin utils to export all database from our MySQL database to files. Then we were able to use that files to insert them to other database, and that's why we created a backup for our database. In the next section, we will be looking at the topic of user management. In this section, we'll be looking at the topic of user management, and we will try to automate that tedious task. So we will start from adding new user on Linux system. We will try to add it using Python script. We'll be leveraging Linux util, but it will be automated using Python code. Next, we'll be modifying user information. So we'll take an existing user and we will try to modify some information concerning that particular user. At the end, we will try to write a Python program that will fetch data from CSV file, and based on content of that file, in which there will be user and password, we'll create a lot of users, and this process will be automated using Python code as well. And this is a first video of our fifth section, and in this video I'll be creating users using Python code. So I'll be using OS Python package to invoke Linux command, because we will be needing to invoke some command that is responsible for creating users on Linux operating system. We'll be creating that specific user, and also we will need to use crypt Python package to encrypt password, because we want to have password stored securely. So let's go to the code. So we need to start from importing OS package. This is a Python standard package, so we don't need to install it using Python dependency manager. Also, crypt package is shipped with Python, so we don't need to install it externally as well. Firstly, let's start from defining a password variable, and this is some kind of dummy password. So let's say that this is a password like this. So this is a string. Next, we need to encrypt that password, because operating system util that we will use in a moment need to have encrypted password passed. So we are calling the crypt method on the crypt package, and we are passing a password that is a string and second argument. Second argument will be used as a salt. So this is something like will be used to decrypt and encrypt our password. Once we done that, we are assigning password that is encrypted to the encrypt password variable. At the end, there is an actual call to user add command. This is a Linux command that is available in every Linux operating system, and it takes two arguments. First is a password, and we are specifying it the flag p, and we need to pass an encrypted password variable here. And next is a username, and let's say that this is a John Smith. So this is a username of our user that will be invoked. And everything goes inside of the operating system package system method. This is a method that will just call the shell automatically. So using that simple script, we are able to create user with a given password automatically using Python programming language and libraries that are within that language. In the next video, we'll try to modify user information, so we'll try to change password of the existing user on our computer. In this video, we'll try to open process session for a given user and change password for that specific user. So for example, we are able to open it as the sudo, and then we will be able to change password for that specific user. So we'll be modifying user information. So we'll start from starting Python process using popen function, and then we'll be changing password of existing user. And at the end, we will wait if the process terminated successfully or not, and we will log that outcome accordingly. In this Python script, we will start from importing a subprocess package. It will give us an ability to open new process inside of the Python program, so we'll be able to spawn other processes. Next, we are also importing time and particularly sleep. This will be a function that will be used for waiting for some time. So we'll wait for the success, and if success occurs, then everything's fine, and otherwise we will log an error. We will open a password command that is inside of the user bin passwd. So this is a standard Linux util, so we will open it as a specific user and change password for that user. And we are creating a setPassword function that can be used in our programs when automating using Python. And it takes an user and password, so 2 arguments. We need to create a command, and that command will be a passwd, and it will be opened as the user that is passed to that setPassword function. Next, we are using a subprocess package that we just imported at the beginning, and we are invoking popen function, passing command. It will start a process into separate process, of course, and it will start the passwd for that specific user. We are specifying this should be a piped process. Next, we are writing new password. So we are just writing, and p argument is passed and new password, and it should change a password of an existing user. At the end, we are flashing everything that was inside of that process, and at this time everything should be as expected, so we should be able to change a password. But that process will take some time, so we are giving the passwd command some time, 1 second to end gracefully. So we are waiting some time, and we are executing the pull function. It will wait for the process to finish. If it finishes, then we are breaking the loop, and that's all. Otherwise, we are sleeping for 100 milliseconds, and next iteration happen. If we will not be able to pull and finish within that 1 second, we are going to else. So we are terminating the current process, sleeping for some time and killing that process. Because terminate is only sending a signal to the specific process. So this is a graceful termination. We are waiting 1 second. And if we will not be able to kill that, then we are executing kill that will forcefully shut down that process. And we are raising a runtime exception saying that we were not able to set the password using passwd command. And also, if the return code of that process is different from 0, so we were able to close the process gracefully, but return code was not 0, also it means that passwd command failed. So we are raising exception as well, and we are passing a failed return code message. So using that program, we are able to pass a user and password. and we will change a password of the existing user inside of the separate process. In the next video, we'll write a Python program to add users from CSV file. In this video, we'll try to chain everything what we learned throughout this section. So we will start from loading some users from CSV file, and then we will try to automate process of creating users on the local operating system. So everything will be automated, so we will write a Python program to add users from CSV file. We will be analyzing CSV file with users and passwords because we need to know what is a structure of that file and how to extract data from that file. Next, we'll be writing a Python program that reads that CSV file, and based on that CSV file, user passwords, we will be creating users on our local machine. So we will be leveraging knowledge that we gained in the previous videos in this specific section. So let's say that we are given a names.csv file. Inside of that file, we have two columns. First column is the username column, and second one is a password column. We can have, of course, multiple rows, but for the purpose of learning, we are here only two rows. So first row is a user first, and password is secret. Then we have user second, that has password that is even more secret. And then we want to fetch all data from that file and create users accordingly. So similarly to the first video, we need to import crypt package that will be used to encrypt password that is read from the names.csv file. Because that password is also not encrypted, it should be in a production systems, but for the purpose of demonstration, let's say that it is not. Then you are importing CSV package that also ships with Python package, so we don't need to install it separately, and operating system package that will be used to invoke specific Linux command. So let's start from opening file. So we can use a Python with statement and open, and we are passing a path to this specific file. So name of our file is a names and extension is CSV. So names.csv file, and we are giving it name CSV file because we need to make an area for that specific file. Next, using CSV package, we have dict reader. So it is a dictionary reader because when we will see, every CSV file could be presented as dictionary. So we are passing a CSV file and it will return a reader. Reader could be iterated, so we can use a for in loop from Python language. So for every row in reader, we are reading it. And let's start from encrypting password. So we are using crypt.crypt method, but this time we need to alias a specific column from the given row. So from that row, we are taking a column password, so it will be fetched. So for example, for the user first, there will be secret, then more secret, and so on and so on. Then we are invoking operating system.system method. So we are using user add method that we know already. We are passing an encrypted password, and then we need to pass a username. So we are using a row, and this time we are taking the value of column username for that specific row. So in this way, we can automate process of creating users based on the names.csv file. If we want to add more users, we can use more users here. So let's say we are creating third user and password for that user will be ABC. So this will be a new user and this will be automatically taken by that program and new user will be created. So let's look at the summary of this specific section. So firstly, we saw how to automate creation of users. Then we change password of existing user. At the end, we read users from CSV file and automate process of creation of those users. In the next section, we will be looking at the process management. So we'll be automating process management using psutil from Python. In this section, we'll be looking at the process management of our computer using Python. We'll be automating process management using Python psutil library. We'll be installing psutil and we'll be using that library to perform various automation monitoring things concerning resources on our computer. So we'll be checking this space using psutil. Also, we'll be finding out applications that have high CPU usage. And this is our first video of this section about monitoring resources on our computer. And firstly, we need to start from installing psutil Python module. So we'll see what a psutil is and what can we achieve using psutil. Once we will know that, we'll be installing that module that will be used throughout this section. So let's see at this module documentation. So it has a GitHub page and let's see what does it say. So this is a psutil processes and system utilities. It's a closed platform library for retrieving information on running processes and system utilization. So we can have information about CPU, memory, disk, network, sensor, and everything is available by Python API. It is useful mainly for system monitoring, profiling, and limiting processes resources and management of running processes. It implements many functionalities offered by the Unix command line tool, such as ps, stop, lsoff, netstat, who, df, and so on and so on. So we can use it to automate nearly everything related to monitoring and management of processes. Moreover, psutil could be used on multiple platforms, so it has support for Linux operating system, Windows, OS X, and so on and so on. So we can automate nearly everything and everything will be portable. So this is an abstraction layer that gives us that library. We don't need to worry about specific Windows command, Linux command, and so on. We can just create a Python program that will be translated to the specific platform, and that is hidden from us. So let's see what we can achieve. So we can monitor CPU, we can monitor memory of our computer, we can monitor disk consumption, network, sensors that are accessed in our computer, and also we can perform all process management tasks. So let's start from installing it. So let's use pip dependency manager and call install psutil. It will spawn, process and install that util on our local machine. And in the next video, we'll be writing Python program to check the free disk space. Welcome! In this second video, we'll be starting leveraging psutil library and we will use that Python library to create a Python program to check the free disk space. So we will be finding information about the disk partitions that are available on our local machine. We'll be finding information about the disk usage and also about I/O counter. It could be interesting if we want to know how much the disk can still live. If it has a lot of I/O counters, maybe we need to replace it somehow, or that disk could be failed in soon. So let's start from importing psutil. First we want to take a disk partitions, and psutil has a very useful method that is called disk partitions, and it will return all partitions on our machine disk. Next we want to take a disk usage of the disk on our machine, and we can specify a path where that disk is mounted. We want to take information about all disks in our machine, so we want to take a root directory as a mounting directory. At the end, we want to set a disk I/O counter, and we want to see it summarically. So if you want to see the statistic per specific disk, we need to per disk set it to true. And if you want to see it in a sum up, then we want to pass false here. But let's start this program. And let's start from analyzing disk partitions. We can see that we have a div disk1 and It has options that is local, root, and so on and so on. Then we have a second disk that is mounted. This is a Postman application, and on the Mac OS X, when you are installing new app, it is mounting a new disk basically. That's why we see that disk here. Next we have some kind of the temporary disk and also other informations. Very important for us is a disk usage. So we can see how many space we have. So this is around 250 gigabytes. And there is a 220 gigabytes used. So it means that we have 27 gigabytes free. And this is an 88.9%. And we can use that function, for example, to create a monitoring script that will alert us if the disk usage is above certain threshold. So for example, if that person will be above 95, we want to alert our system administrator that it needs to make some free disk space. At the end we have a disk IO counter that will tell us how bad the disk is worth. So we can see that read count is something like 29 millions, then write count is 23 millions, we have how many bytes is read, how many bytes we read, and also read time and write time. So how much time disk spent on write and how much time the disk spent on read. So let's see that write is for example 80 million and read is 17 million. So it means that it write more than read. So this is a very interesting property, and maybe we want to optimize our resources, our disk, for that specific use case. So we can analyze the pattern of usage of that specific disk. In the next video we will try to write similar program, but this time that program will be checking CPU processes. So we'll write a Python program to check high CPU process. In this video we'll be using that psutil to create a Python program to check high CPU processes. So we will start from calculating CPU % usage globally, then we'll try to extract that information in the per core granulation. Next we'll be finding out about CPU statistics, and also we'll try to extract information about CPU frequency. So let's see the code. So firstly we will of course need to import the psutil library. We can take a CPU times using psutil CPU times method. Next, let's say that we want to take a CPU percentage and there will be a percentage of usage of CPU. We want to do it 3 times, so we are using for in range from Python programming language because we don't want to have only one value. CPU percentage usage is distributed in time, so we want to iterate over a couple times. Next, we want to take a CPU percentage usage, but per core. So we are specifying CPU percent method, same as previously, but here we are passing per CPU and setting it to true. It will print all CPU percentage per core. So if we will have 4 cores on our computer, it will print out 4 values. If 8, then 8, and so on and so on. At the end, we can examine CPU times percent, so we can see how much time every CPU is performing. But this time we want to take that statistics and we want to sum up from all cores available. So we are passing per CPU parameter and setting it to false. Often when we are writing computer programs, we want to base some kind of value, so for example how much threads our program has, based on CPU count. We can take that information using psutil, so it will return CPU count. We will see how much cores we have. But every recent CPU has physical cores and logical cores. And usually, for example, we can have 4 physical cores, but every core can have 2 logical cores. So for example, there will be 8. So let's say that you want to take only physical one, not the logical one. To take that statistics, we need to pass a logical parameter and set it, of course, to false. At the end, we can take all statistics concerning CPU and we can also examine the frequency of the CPU. So let's start the program and let's examine what does it print. We can see that it takes some time because iteration and gathering statistics about CPU will need to take some time. But let's examine the first one. So CPU times is returning as CPU times object, and then we have how much time user space was performed and how much time system performed, so usage of CPU, and how long the CPU was idle. Next we are printing a CPU percentage user globally. So we can see that right now our CPU globally, summarically, all cores are taking around 28%. We can also take the statistics per CPU, and we can see that we printed out CPU percentage per CPU core. And we can see that every row has 8 elements. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 CPUs. And we can see that first core is 38% usage, then 60, 32, 50, 35, 50, 34 and 60. So we can see that not all cores in our CPU are used in exactly the same way. We are iterating 3 times, so we have 3 statistics. CPU can be used by user and by the system. And here we are seeing summarically, so this is a statistics for user space and system space that is summed up. But sometimes we are interested how much CPU time is used by user and by system. And that method gives us this. So we can see that user is used in the 21% and system is in around 5% and idle is 73%. Next we are taking counter of CPUs, cores, and the first call is returning logical CPUs. So it returns that we have 8 cores on our machine. Next we are passing logical false flag, so we are taking only physical ones. So it returns that we have 4 physical cores. At the end we can see statistics about CPU. We can see how much context switches has, how much interruptions and soft interrupts and system calls. At the end we can see that CPU frequency is at the max level. So we have a CPU that has frequency of 2800. Minimum is also this value and maximum is also this value. So that CPU cannot adjust its current frequency, so it is set to min and max is equal. In the next video we will try to write a Python program to diagnose network. Welcome! In every recent application that is available in web, the network is one of the most important factors. And in this video we will try to write a program in Python to diagnose network on our machine. So we'll be calculating net I/O counters, we'll be finding out net addresses and calculating net statistics. And we will achieve all of those goals using PSUtil. So let's start from taking net I/O counters and let's see what does it print. It will return a packet sent and packet received. Also we will see how much errors we had while receiving and sending some information from our local network. Next we want to see net if addresses and let's see what does it return. It returns the addresses associated to each network interface card installed on the system as a dictionary. So we will see a family, so it can be iNet, iNet6 and so on. We will see address, that is a primary address. We will see a net mask and also broadcast. At the end we want to take all statistics concerning our local network. So we will call a netIf statistics method and it will return information about every network interface card installed on the system. And we will have information if the interface is up. We will see if it works in a duplex way. We will also be able to examine the speed of that specific interface and maximum transmission units expressed in bytes. So let's start our program and see what our local network prints. So we can see that firstly we have our first local network counter and we can see how much packet we receive, how much packets we send. We can see that we have no errors, so this is very good, and other information for every network card. Then we have our addresses, so we can see that we have an INET for localhost and mask is standard 255000. Then we have another address that is some kind like, let's see, we can see that we have another address family and address of our IP in local network, and so on. We can examine every IP in our network. At the end, we have statistics for our network interfaces. So we can see that we don't know if it works in duplex or no, so we were not able to find that out, but we have a maximum transmission unit expressed in bytes here, and also for other network cards. So based on that statistics and informations, we can choose a proper network card, or we can find out if some kind of failure occurred. So we can find out that one specific network card is working not as expected. So it works slower than usually, and then we can perform some administrative tasks. Let's sum up this section. So we started from examining PSUtil library and we learned about that library. Next we installed that PSUtil library and we written a Python program to check disk statistics. So we're able to calculate how much disk space is used and other statistics. Next we written a Python program to check CPU statistics. So we were able to find out how much cores do we have, logical and physical. Also, we're able to calculate percentage usage and how much CPU percentage usage was used by user space and how much was used by the system space of our network operating system. At the end, we written a Python program to check network statistics. So we were able to find out about network cards installed on our machine, and we taken statistics about sending, receiving and speed of our network interfaces. Welcome in the 7th and last section of our Enterprise Automation in Python course. In this section, we'll be looking at the ways of automating cloud infrastructure, particularly Amazon Web Services, using Python. So we'll see what a Boto module is. We'll be using that Boto to automate our infrastructure. We'll be installing that Boto module, and we'll see how to use it with AWS. We'll be creating EC2 instances using Boto package. And this is a first video in which we will be installing Boto module. So we'll see what a Boto is and what can we achieve using that module. At the end we'll be installing Boto module. So Boto is available on GitHub, and we can see on that page the description that this is an Amazon Web Services software development kit for Python programming language, and it allows Python developers to write software that makes use of services like Amazon S3 and Amazon EC2. And we can find the latest version here and also documentation how to set up it. And also we have a detailed documentation of the Boto free read the docs IO. So if you are interested in anything, any particular special, you can go to this website. So let's see what we can achieve using Boto module. So we can use Amazon S3 and its API. We can use Amazon EC2 and also its API. So we can automate nearly everything related to those services. Also we can use Amazon SQS, that is a queue from Amazon Web Services. And let's see first what an S3 is. So S3 has a simple web services interface that allows us to store and retrieve any amount of data at any time from anywhere on the web. And it gives any developer access to the same highly scalable, reliable, fast and inexpensive data storage infrastructure that Amazon uses to run its own global network. And this service aims to maximize benefit of scale and to pass those benefits to the developers. And second thing that we'll be automating using Python is EC2. So this is an elastic compute cloud, and we will be calling it EC2, provides scalable computing capacity in the Amazon Web Services cloud. We can use EC2 and it will eliminate need to invest in hardware upfront, so we can develop and deploy applications faster. We can use EC2 to launch as many or as few virtual services and servers as we need, and we can configure security, networking and manage storage of those services. Also, EC2 enables us to scale up or down to handle changes in requirements on spikes in popularity, so it reduces our need, if we are building application, to forecast traffic of our website. We will be using Boto 3 because we are using Python 3, the newest version of that language. So we can specify pip install Boto 3 and we will be ready to go and ready to use that library. And in the next video, we'll be setting authentication credentials from our Boto 3 module. In the previous video, we installed Boto 3 module on our local machine, so we will be able to leverage that great library to interact with Amazon Web Services. But before we started, we need to set up authentication credentials from Amazon. So in this video, we'll be doing exactly that task. So we'll be configuring our Boto 3 client and we will creating Amazon credentials file. Also, we will create a file that will specify Amazon zone that will be used default by our application. So we need to create a .aws folder inside of our home directory. And inside of that directory, there should be two files. First is a config file and second is credentials file. So let's look at the credentials file firstly. So we need to have AWS access key ID and AWS secret access key. So once you will create your Amazon account, you will have key ID and secret access key available to interact with Amazon Web Services. Then you need to just pass your ID and secret key here. So this is a first ingredient that we need to set up when you want to start interacting with AWS automatically. Second thing is a config file. And inside of that config, we need to specify a default region because Amazon and Amazon Web Services are available in multiple countries and multiple parts of the world. So for example, we have a region that is called US East 1. We can also choose Europe, we can choose Asia, Australia, and so on and so on. But we need to have that default, so the Boto 3 client will know where to create new EC2 instance or S3 bucket if we will not specify it explicitly. So we created two ingredients using Boto 3. So we created a credentials file and config file. And right now we are able to create new EC2 instance using Boto 3 client library. Welcome! In the first video of this section, we'll be creating EC2 instance using Boto 3 client interface. So we will be passing multiple configurations parameters to Amazon Web Services, and this cloud will create EC2 instances for us using that API. So we'll start from creating EC2 instance using Boto 3. We'll be creating instance with storage. So we will want to have a persistent storage assigned to that instance. Not only RAM, not only memory, but also a persistent storage. Also we'll be configuring type of instance. So we will see what kind of instance should it be. Because on Amazon we have multiple types of instance. Some are larger with better CPUs, some are weaker with less CPUs, less memory, and so on and so on. So we will pass a specific type that will be great fit for the medium performance use. At the end we'll be configuring min and max number of instances, because as you remember, I've mentioned in previous video that Amazon can handle scaling of our services automatically. So if we have a spike in traffic, it will add new EC2 instance for us. But we need to specify an upper and lower limit, because we are having also some kind of budget that we don't want to surpass. So we need to specify it. So to start using Boto3 client, we need to import it from Boto3, and we are calling it Boto3 as well. First, we need to start session using Boto3. So we are creating new session, and we need to specify region name. If we will not specify it here, the region name that was created in the config, that was a default, if you remember, will be taken. So then we need to create some kind of resource. So let's say that we want to create new EC2 instance. So we are creating a new resource and we are calling it EC2. So we are assigning it to the EC2 variable, and then we are able to create new instance of that service. EC2 has a method create instances that takes a lot of parameters, but let's focus on the more important. So if you want to have persistence in our EC2, we need to pass a block device mappings. Every device should have name. So let's say that device name will be a disk1, and also virtual name of that specific device will be disk1. Then we are specifying more granular information. So we want to have data encrypted, and we want to delete that on termination. So if you want to have that data persistent, we need to specify false here. We want to have 1024 megabytes. So this will be 1 gigabyte, and we will have a persistent storage of 1 gigabyte. So we are specifying it here, and volume type will be standard. So this is not SSD, not HDD, but this will be a standard Amazon. So if they will change a standard, that disk will be different also. Next, we need to pass an instance type. And as I mentioned, on Amazon we have a lot of types of instances. And for example, this is a H1 4X large. So let's see kinds of instances Amazon has. Here we can see what types of instances we have. So on Amazon, the smaller instance is T2 Nano. We have one virtual CPU here, and we have 3 hours credit for CPU. We can also have half gigabyte of memory. Next, we have micro that has more CPU credits and more memory. Then we have small, medium, large, X large, and 2 times X large. So that biggest one instance has 8 virtual CPUs, so 8 threads. We have a lot of CPU credits, so we have 81 credits per hour, and also we have 32 gigabytes of memory. So this is a really powerful instance, and we can achieve a lot using that type of instance. So we specified it here. Then we want to monitor it automatically, so we need to pass a monitoring enabled. So Amazon Web Services will give us a nice user interface with a monitoring. We can specify a placement of that specific instance or instances if there will be scaling automatically, and we are changing it to availability zone to USS1. At the end, we are leveraging the scaling ability of Amazon. So we are leveraging that it will be happen automatically, but the lower limit that we are saying is that min count of instances of that specific type will be equal to 1, and max count will be equal to 2. So if the Amazon Web Services will see that we have a spike in traffic and we need to have more resources, it will spawn second instance, but it will not spawn third one if those 2 instances will be handling whole traffic. So this we need to be careful about it. And defining instance in such way will create a new EC2 instance on your account using your credentials that you will pass in the credentials file. And in the next video will be a last one for our enterprise automation in Python course. We'll be creating and using Amazon S3 buckets. In this video, we'll be creating and using Amazon S3 buckets. We'll be using Boto and S3 API. we'll be creating buckets inside of S3 instance, we'll be getting and putting bucket and downloading file from bucket and deleting it. So there will be a lot going on and we'll be interacting with S3. So S3 architecture is following. Firstly, we are starting our session similarly to EC2 example, then we are taking handle to S3 instance, and then we are able to create buckets inside of the S3. Buckets is a namespace that can be used by our application. One bucket can have a lot of data inside of it, but there is some kind of limit. So if you are in that limit, let's read documentation and see if you are or not. But let's say that we are not in a limit and we are creating new S3 client and new bucket. So we can execute create bucket method. That bucket should be private, so only our application will be able to read from that bucket. We are giving a name for that bucket. It will be Python example bucket and bucket configuration. A lot of configuration options here, but that one is required. So we are passing that this bucket should be created in US S1. So once we execute that code, it will have ready bucket to use. So let's interact with bucket that is existing. So here we are creating new S3 resource and we need to take a bucket. So let's take same bucket that we created here. So we will take a handle to bucket and then we are able to interact with that bucket using Boto3 API. So first we are putting some kind of object. So we are putting that object and body should be a byte array. So to convert, for example, string to byte array in Python, we need to create a b suffix and then we are passing that string and it will be converted to the byte array. Next, let's say that we want to delete an object from the bucket. So we have a delete object method on the specific bucket here. We need to pass a delete operation that has an object. Objects need to have a key for that specific item, because every item inside of a bucket is referenced by the specific key. And also we need to pass a version ID. So we want to delete that specific version ID. And we are able to delete that object. Also, S3 can have and can handle really big files. So we can download file from S3. So using S3 and bucket, and let's say that will be our Python example bucket. If we will have a hello.txt file, we can download that file using download file method from S3 bucket API. We are passing a name of that specific file and we are passing where resulting file should be saved. So it should be saved at tmp hello.txt. And that file could be really a huge one because S3 is able to store files that are in terabytes of storage. So that was a last video in this section and in this course. So let's sum up the enterprise automation in Python. We started from installing Python environment, setting everything and installing PyCharm IDE. We performed administrative tasks with Fabric, so we automated deployment of Python application, so we were able to test application, commit it and push it to some external Git repository using Fabric. Everything was automated. Next, we performed automatic database management with PyMySQL. So we're able to create databases, create tables, insert new rows into tables, delete them, and also export content of MySQL database for the persistent and for the backup purpose. Next, we did a process management monitoring of CPU, disk and network. So we were leveraging psutil, that is a great library from Python world, to fetch needed information about resources on our computer. In the last section, we interacted with Amazon AWS EC2 and S3 using Boto3 client. So I hope you enjoyed that course and bye.